How did angels get their wings? Well, if we look into the history, we can tell that there are several creatures that were utilized by the Jewish writers who wrote about these so called angels being messengers of the Lord. But we do know that they copied or at least borrowed this from several other groups of Afro-Asiatic people who had in turn or themselves borrowed it from Sumerians. If we look at Sumeria or Sumeria, all we see is nothing but wings, especially when it comes to genies, as they were called, and also the sons of Anu, the Anunnaki. These wings have been utilized over and over again by the Sumerians, whether it's the people who pollinate flowers, whether it's the genies that contact humans, or whether it's just something to do with the spiritual world. This separates them from the ancient Egyptians and other Afro-Asiatics. Let's do some simple mathematics. The past is responsible for the future, and as such, the past, that is the Sumerians, was responsible for the later Jews and Christians and Muslims who would believe in flying angels and other flying creatures that could take people to heaven. And of course, these wings were functional in a way that was very similar to that of the Sumerian religions. If you look at Egypt, of course, there's Isis who had wings, and Horus had wings when he was drawn as a full animal. But usually, these gods are depicted without wings because, of course, they don't need them. They are not just a cute thing that you can do aesthetically in Sumeria. These things or these genies actually needed those wings, and so did the sons of Anu and all these other people. So, why did they come down? Well, in Acadia, one of the first Afro-Asiatic groups to take over the Sumerian region. So, from Afro-Asiatic regions where the Afro-Asiatic language is thought to have expanded from, the Akkadians went to Sumerian regions and formed an empire there, consolidating powers. And then, of course, other kingdoms came up, and by the time of the Jews, a lot of different forms of religions that had been based off of the Sumerian religion had sprung up, and the Jews were only one of them. They would then carry this message that a lot of other people had carried. You also have people like Zoroastrians and all other kinds of people who also descend from Sumerian religions. Technically, angels are gods or demigods, which is why some Christians are against praying to angels. Because, of course, if you pray to angels, that means you are elevating them to a god, because a god is someone of supernatural powers who is worthy of worship. This would include angels for some people. Back in the day, from who the angels were based on, probably the Anunnaki, those were actually worshipped. By the way, I have to mention real quick, when I talk about Anunnaki, I'm not talking about the interpretation by Zachariah Sitchin. I read the first 4 pages of Zachariah Sitchin and I realized I'm reading like an alternative Bible. It's written almost like the Bible, but it's not anywhere close to the original script. The original Sumerian script is way more technical than everything he writes in his book, but we're not talking about Zachariah Sitchin. We're talking about the original Anunnaki, the children of Anu, and Ki. Another form of winged animals or winged beings that are considered to be either protective or symbolic are cherubs, and these cherubs were known all the way back to the Sumerian time as well. And a lot of time these cherubs are depicted as slightly off, which of course makes sense because they're unearthly, they're supernatural, but they're always depicted with wings, and even in their writings, they're always shown with wings. In the Bible, in other texts, Judeo texts, Judeo religion mentions them a lot, even though they are present in other religions that are not necessarily Judeo.